Welcome to the Finance and Performance Committee meeting for today. I'll start with the opening karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia metaratara ki tai, ehi aka ana te aka atakara kura, hei tio, hei huka, hei hahu, ti hei Māori ora. Apologies, I have an apology from Councillor Munt for unwellness. Is there any others to note? No. Can I have a mover that we accept Elizabeth's apology? Lydia, seconded by Sarah. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried, thank you. What have we got? Conflicts of interest. We've got conflicts of interest on record. If there's anything particularly pertinent to the business we're discovering today, please note it at the time, but otherwise we'll move on. There's nobody for our public forum today. My chair's report. Just a moment. So staff have continued to refine the graphs that they put into the reports today, so thank you for that to the staff. You'll notice a few new figures in there. If you've got any feedback, I suggest that you provide it outside of the meeting so that we can keep things moving along. The rates remediation, all of the straightforward overcharging's been dealt with through the sending out of the Q4 invoices. Those that are a wee bit more complicated are still being worked through by staff. And if they don't manage to sort them all out by June 30th, then the funds that pertain to those will be held so that it doesn't influence the finances of next financial year. The Lincoln Town Centre Fund, staff are working on a terms of reference and criteria that will allow the businesses to apply for those funds. They'll bring us a paper as soon as possible for approval, and hopefully that we can have applications being able to be accepted in early to mid-July. And as a side note, you'll have seen that the budget included an interesting announcement about the incentives for growth funds. So I've asked that staff give us a bit of a briefing at some point in time, because that's quite an interesting area, but obviously it's quite new, so we don't have a lot of details at the moment. I'll move that my paper is accepted. Can I have a seconder? Samuel, all those in favour? Aye. That's carried, thank you.
Excuse me, Aaron, can we just confirm the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah. Any comments on the minutes from the last meeting? Can I have a mover to accept the minutes? Denise, seconded by Lydia. All those in favour? Aye. It's carried. I'll pass over to Alison for her report.
Thank you, Aaron, and good morning. I'll take the paper as read. I think just a few things to sort of point out that a lot of the teams, their focus has been on landing on the final annual plan numbers that we'll talk to this afternoon, and also focusing on that investment divestment space to look at our commercial opportunities that are out there. I'm happy to leave it at that.
Can I have a mover for Alison's report? Tracy, seconded by Sarah. All those in favour? It's carried, thank you. The first paper we have is digital transformation. So Alison's going to give an introduction to this.
Thanks, Aaron. I think just on this one, Lynn will take you through the paper, but I thought it's just worth pointing out just in finance hygiene that they'll cover, or finance transformation. A lot of conversations taking place around the GL codes and closing those down, but that project is way bigger than just the GL codes. It's looking at our systems and processes, our cost centre structure, which is ultimately causing us some problems in reporting. So I thought it's just useful to preface what Lynn covers just in terms of the breadth and depth of that financial hygiene transformation space. I'll hand over to Lynn.
Good morning, everyone. With me today is Greg Linus, who is the project manager for our digital transformation projects. I'll obviously take the paper as read.
Sorry, Lynn, do you want to just move the mic a wee bit closer to you? Thanks.
Is that better? Lovely. Take the paper as read. A couple of highlights. Successes is the building consent project, which is moving from an older, outdated software to upgrade. There was a question in the portal about if the support had run out on the old one on the 31st of March, what were we doing? Objective's the company that owns both parts of the software, so they're continuing to support on a month-by-month basis. And we had an outage, I think, last week, which they responded to and managed effectively, so we're pretty confident in that. The other successes is around Close the Loop project, which is when customers are sending a query in and it goes off to other groups, it goes into black holes, if you like, and it's not coming back to close the loop. So we're looking at integrations between different systems so that we can bring that back. Printer rollout saved us around 10,000 a month, and the early indications on paper use and what have you is looking good. Flowingly, which was a replacement for ProMap, which people are putting all their processes into, so we're having a big push with people to document their processes into Flowingly, so they're there for other use rather than in people's heads. The next year move will be to sit down with ELT and to talk about spend next year, but largely we're moving from a digital transformation to an operational transformation. We want to fix the base so that we can build new AI tools and things like that on top of it. So next year the large projects will be HRIS, and I'd like to say replacement, but we don't have one at all at this point, and fixing the bookings project that had some work done on it but needs work. Questions?
I've got a question. It's great to see the cost savings. The budget for the Alpha 1 project states that it's ex-contingency, but the financial hygiene project doesn't state that if the budget is excluding contingency. So is the overspend of 122k there over and above the contingency amount, or is that contingency going to wipe out some of that 122k?
Good morning, everyone. Good question. The finance hygiene project didn't have a contingency amount attached to it, okay. So it was it's just a straight overspend on the budgeted amount.
Sophie.
Yeah, welcome, Lynn and Greg, isn't it? Welcome to council, or our meeting. Yeah, the only query I have left, because you've answered quite a couple of them already, in the miscellaneous initiative as part of the report, it mentions development of an online solicitor portal. What is that, please? I'm curious.
So the online solicitor portal is for legal information to come in and out of. We're working with the legal team on that. I don't know all the detail of what they intend to manage through that. Okay. Because, the requirements are about the portal rather than the detail that they've got in there. But yes, exactly what it sounds like. It's for legal information, and that means that we can lock down access better and control who gets to that information, and we can a little bit more auditable.
Nice. Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
John.
In relation to the finance hygiene, that one of the issues appears to be, and it sort of came to the fore in the community halls, items being allocated to sort of different codes. So by the 1st of July, is it anticipated that that will be sort of under control?
I'm happy to take that one, Lynn. Thanks, John. So we have a cost centre structure change looking to be in play by 1 July. That's coupled with training out to the broader organisation and very clear narrative around what codes should be used for certain things. It won't all be fixed by 1 July, but we're working very closely to try and get this aligned.
Agreed.
Just with Alpha 1 finishing on the 31st of March and we're rolling over to Objective Build, building consents submitted. They've got a 2-year period to build the property. Is there any risk, ramifications of someone not building code compliance issued in that time and then having to resubmit everything through Objective Build?
No, there's not. So Alpha One and Objective Build are Objective Build is basically an up-spec'd version of Alpha One, and so it's looking at the same basic database sitting behind it. So very minimal risk.
Everything can roll through.
Everything rolls through. It's the same data.
Beautiful.
Lydia.
Thank you. I think this is great to see the overview of the initiatives that are happening in the organisation, and actually I just want to say that all of the papers in here, it is really great to see all of this coming to light and having the reporting into finance and performance. And before I break my own rules, I will have a question here. My question's around scope creep and around the initiatives and making sure that, and I totally understand that things happen when you open up something to get efficiencies. And so I'm just trying to make sure that it's is the scope creep from project discipline, or is it from opening up these initiatives and effectively finding a can of worms and finding that there is more to this than what we initially thought?
So more the latter. We have found some stuff that's probably been a bit of lack of discipline over the last couple of years, which we're tightening up now. There's been, it'd be fair to say that there's probably scope creep has been almost a culture here for a while. So it's certainly one of our drivers to cut that down and to park it and to look for phases if they want to go further. But yeah, more the latter, but a bit of both.
Yeah, okay. And then I'm just, you talked about the savings from the printer rollout, and that's awesome. It's really great for us to hear the efficiencies that this has been implemented within the business and creating for us. And I think if this is going to come back to us going forward, I'd love to, or would you be able to share with us what the expected savings within the business are on the initiatives that we have here and the efficiencies in that space?
Yes, no worries. And we can dig in a bit further into business as usual, if you like, projects rather than digital transformation projects, because there's things like we're rolling out a software tool that's helped us manage software better. And last year we saved around 80,000 on Microsoft licensing just because we could see it better.
Yeah, and that is all the things that we're asking you to do, and I'm very grateful that that is happening. So thank you.
I think just adding to what Lynn and Greg has said as well is, in addition to the projects that they're working through, they're also working on building up that internal team capability to reduce and try and remove as much as possible the use of external consultants.
Thank you. No more questions. Very good to see this first report. I look forward to hearing from you in future meetings. Can I have a move that we accept the report? Tracy, seconded by Sophie. All those in favour? Aye. It's carried. Thank you, guys. Now we move to the financials report, and Alison's got a short introduction as well.
Yeah, and I think it's broadly similar to what I've just said in the digital paper. So the reporting that's in front of you today does look a wee bit different. And that's as we sort of progress through looking at what a more detailed dashboard would look like with an appendix that will sit behind it with the detail if a person wants to go and look at that. I think also just worth noting there's been quite a few questions that were raised in Diligent, which is great. So the team will endeavour to try and answer as many as they can throughout today. There might be some that we've just not had time to look at, but a lot of them were focused on FTE consultant vacancies. So Becca and the team are working closely with the people team, and I think similar to what we just discussed in the HRIS is what is an interim solution that enables us to report on this and report on it clearly. I'll stop there and I'll hand over to Becca.
Morning, everyone. Just want to back on a little bit on the solicitors portal, if I can. It's mainly for around solicitors to look at settlements, property settlements. So that was the intention behind that. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the operating performance report up to 30th of April. The net operating surplus as at 30th of April was 65.6 million, resulting in a 31.3 million higher than budget. The overall operating picture shows strong revenue performance from growth-related activities, and maintenance programs are underway and are forecast to be on budget by year end. Going through the individual component, so revenue, year-to-date revenue excluding the development contributions is 170.9 million against a budget of 160.7 million, resulting in a 10.2 million favourable variance. You'll note in the report we've managed to get the forecast in here, so the overall forecasted result at 30 June is expected to be 4.7 million better than budget. In expenditure, the year-to-date expenditure is 136.2 million against the budget of 143.8 million, resulting in a 7.6 million favourable variance. Again, the overall forecasted result at 30 June is expected to be 3.2 million better than budget. In the conclusion, the year-to-date operating position is a positive indication of the Council's performance. Ongoing recruitment and the use of outsourced resource offsets by the higher than expected revenue from fees and charges does support the development in the district. Known risks are being actively managed with regular monthly reviews of assumptions and reports to ELT, and emerging risks are being monitored and action taken to mitigate impacts where possible. The April operating surplus reflects the growth across the district, timing of expenditure, identified savings as previously mentioned, and funding impacts rather than under-delivery of services, noting the forecasted surplus is before the year-end adjustments have been made. That's the end of my report for now, but I wanted to cover off some of the councillor queries, if that's okay, before I open to questions. Is that all right? So some of the questions, as Alison mentioned, were around fees and charges in the consulting space. So I just want to address the 5.3 million of year-to-date actuals in fees and charges. 2.1 is actually a direct correlation with the building planning and regulatory team, and these are offset by the increased revenue from the fees and charges. The detail does sit within the attachment that we've now provided, so hopefully that will help give a bit more detail. The breakdown in the consenting space, there's about 700,000 in building consents, there's 1.3 roughly in resource consents, and 125 for resource policy. Those are the areas that we can directly on charge. So that's the breakout there. The remaining balance is made up from consultants used for projects, contractors, and vacancy covers throughout the rest of the business. And it's expected that trend will keep increasing just because we are forecast to be 1.8 million over budget, which will probably go past year end as well, just because of that growth projection. We utilise around 47 suppliers in the consenting space, and to date, from what I can see, there's about 161 suppliers that we utilise as consultants, but they aren't always consultants. It's just the bucket that Alison was referring to that we will split out for next year. To give you a better indication of where these are against contractors, consultants and vacancies. Staff recruitment was another question that we had. It can take on average 25 days from advert to acceptance, and then the time taken to onboard new employees can depend upon the notice period from the previous employer, but on average it's about 4 weeks. And then the other question was around personnel costs for SWL. They are included in the results from July to December, but there are no additional costs for them being included in the budget from January to June. And hopefully that covers off most of them. So open to questions.
Samuel.
Thank you, Becca. The other gains that was listed for page 28, can you give any examples of those and why we had them budgeted that we were going to receive them but didn't?
Bear with me.
Your call is important to us. Please hold.
I might, if it's okay, I'll come back to you on that one. I'll do I'll do some investigation and come back to you, Sam, on that.
All good. And any explanation as to why we are so much higher in surplus? I mean, surplus, lovely. Love a good surplus. But can we pin it down to any one line item or?
Surplus, obviously, there are some initiatives coming through that is making the surplus probably a bit bigger, but Neil can take you through what happens with that surplus and hopefully a bit more detail on that one.
Thanks, Becca. Yeah, so just looking at the disclosures in that P&L, you do have the line item that discloses the surplus excluding development contributions. The development contributions revenue is capital, not revenue.
Liability, yeah.
And then also you have your vested assets that gets capitalized at the end of the year, which is also assets gifted basically to council to operate and maintain in the future. So those are non-operating revenue as well.
Okay. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, just from 5.9, the personnel costs. If there were X number of staff that left Selwyn District Council and went to Selwyn Water Limited, my understanding is that would be a reasonable figure. Has that specifically been costed in as a reduction in personnel costs across the organisation?
We have removed all of the Selwyn staff and obviously budget that did relate to that. I appreciate that it's not easy to see that, but again, if there's if you want clarification with as and where, I can provide that for you after the meeting.
Yep, that would be appreciated, especially if it was, even if it's in public excluded, a dollar amount.
Okay.
Lydia.
I think this is so. I always look at this the surplus, and I always recognise it without development contributions because they are, as you said, Sam, a liability for us. And so, I think I'm looking at this and going, we've got 2 more months to capture yet for our end of financial year, and I think there's probably potentially could be some opportunities when we get into financial year, looking at what we could do with any of the surplus, if we can, for next reporting. And I think what I'm looking at this is and going, is there actually any risks for us and financial risk for us in the next 2 months that could change for us in this P&L?
Lydia, I'll cover that one off. So, I mean, I think Neil's covered off the surplus, and what the team are doing, working across the business, is to make sure that everything is captured, everything that we can accelerate is captured within this financial year. But I think it's also just worth noting as well that some of that surplus is enabling us not to borrow as much as well. So it's worth just noting that into the mix, but certainly the team are working where possible with the teams to make sure we can accelerate and capture everything as much as we can this year.
Okay, thank you.
Reece.
Thank you. Always great to see a surplus. Appreciate the comments that have been made about where they are. 5.15 notes, the council has access to the 10 million on call and the Westpac 20 that we worked through. That 20 is just sitting there, just to confirm it says it hasn't been touched.
That's correct, and I'll talk more about that in the balance sheet section,
Yep.
but yes,
No,
you're
that's-
correct.
Thank you. And I guess the annual repayments of 5.6, which is about 700k higher than, can you explain why on our repayments that would be fixed, that we would be over budget? Which is point A of trades and receivables. On the same page, 31.
Are you referring to the annual prepayments?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So the prepayments are captured in our debtors when it is paid, and then it's released on a monthly basis dependent on when that service ends. So every month it's released to the P&L to phase it out. This indicates that there's either been higher prepayments made throughout the year that is phasing out, or most potentially, I don't have the detail in front of me, but potentially the budget wasn't phased on that monthly release either. But I can look into that into more
Would it have been
detail.
adjusted with the rates rebate scenario? Would that have anything to do with that?
No.
No.
So these are prepayments of expenditures like subscriptions and licenses and things like that.
Okay, I just couldn't understand or find where that comes from. Thank you.
Samuel.
Sorry, back again. Is the Westpac and LGFA on-call facilities listed as liabilities currently in the spreadsheet on page 31? Or not, because we haven't drawn on them?
No, they're not. So
Okay.
no balances are reflected because we haven't drawn upon them.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No more questions. We'll move on to Neil's component.
Thank you very much. So I will take the balance sheet section as read. The most material differences to the previous F&P financials report are most significantly, you'll see the cash balance has decreased to $18 million, which is in line with the budget. And this is due to utilizing the $20 million cash standby facility that we have on hand but haven't utilized. So we've been able to utilize the cash we held on to repay debt, causing the decrease in the cash balance. The first tranche of debt repaid by SWL was put into a $60 million term deposit account that is maturing at the end of June to align with our LGFA debt maturing of $60 million end of June as well. So we'll be utilizing that term deposit to repay the debt. And that is the most significant changes on the balance sheet. Happy to take more questions.
And I think just adding to what Neil said as well, in future reports we will be breaking down that debt in a little bit more detail around current year debt, what was the previous year, the movements, etc. But that will be in future reports.
Any questions? No questions. Can I have a mover that we accept the finance report? John, seconder. Agreed. All those in favour? It's carried. Thanks, guys. Do you want to speak to this? Now we have a paper on the development contributions.
Good morning, all. I'll take the paper as read, but I'd like to talk about some key points from the DC paper. Prebbleton Community Centre has been asked about a few times. So from a funding perspective, it is 49% debt funded and 51% DC funded with no targeted rate funding. When it comes to the funding of projects for DCs, the timing of when we receive the DCs does not affect when the projects go ahead. So we have projects which, like the Prebbleton Community Centre, even though it's being funded by community DCs, if we have not yet collected enough DCs, that will not impact the project going ahead. It just means our balance will go negative and then positive as the DCs come in. And another clarification point is that DCs are collected by type and catchment area, not by individual projects. So when we're looking at using the budgets to fund projects, the DCs collected must be from the same type of works and be done in the same area to be used, and they must be growth related. Last time there was questions around reserves and our limit of having to return reserve DCs if we didn't receive them within 10 years. Currently, we are still 4 years out from having to return any DCs, and that would assume that we spent no reserve DCs in the next 4 years. We also got advice from the legal team that if we ever did reach that point, we would basically have to demonstrate that we've met our statutory obligations by taking all reasonable steps to identify who those DCs belong to. We do also, though, have reduced exposure in that purchasing land can be funded through the DCs, and if we have committed staged works, then those can also count towards having the DCs ready to spend. So we're in a very comfortable space in that we shouldn't be having to return DCs anytime soon. That's all the key points I have. Are there any questions?
John.
Yeah, just in the any time soon, is that a shorthand for we're unlikely to be in a position that we'll return DCs?
Well, we're already 4 years away from having to do it, and that's assuming that we didn't spend any reserve DCs at all, so or didn't commit any works in relation to it. So at least 1 or 2 LTP cycles.
Lydia.
I am very much so in future state at the moment. So, Peter, I'll ask you to get your crystal ball out. And I think I'm looking at this and thinking ahead of time, and I'm thinking about the emerging areas where DC charges may need a review and what work we are currently doing heading into that LTP to review this, bearing in mind development levies is floating around, but we can't necessarily rely on timing for that. And so I'm wondering what the team are doing in this space at the moment in the review.
I think in summary, we're working with status quo. The development contribution policy will be reviewed as part of the long-term plan, but I think in summary, we need to keep some level of agility in there to make those changes, depending on what and when DC levies look like. So it's really status quo. We can't, back to your crystal ball comment, we can't really project, but I think it's the agility that we need to keep within the policy that enables us to make changes quickly.
Tracy.
Sorry. DCs. Can somebody explain to me, in Rolleston, I think Huey's are about 28,000, and in Lincoln, they're like 12,500 or thereabouts. I'm plucking these. I'm just wondering about how those differences develop and how quickly we address them, because there's this part of my brain that goes, if Huey's are 12,500 in Lincoln and nearly 30,000 in Rolleston, if I'm a developer, I want to build more in Lincoln because my development contributions are lower. So I may have that wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected. So I'm just trying to work out how I know we're going to be having a session on DCs, but it keeps coming up. People keep asking me in the community as well, why is it that there and it's this here? How do we determine that broadly? And is it growth related? Is it because there's greater growth, quicker growth somewhere else? Because the Lincoln Rolleston one is confusing because there's big growth in Lincoln and big growth in Rolleston. So just trying to understand how they come to be different and what can change them. I hope that made sense. Sorry.
So I'll approach it from 2 points. From the perspective of how DCs are calculated, we basically say, okay, what is the expected growth in an area, whatever catchment areas we use? And we say, okay, well, that's the expected growth. What infrastructure needs to be built to match that growth? What's it going to cost us? And then that dollar value divided by the growth that is expected eventually is essentially how you end up with the Huey rates. From a roading perspective, there wouldn't be any difference from the base roading because DC rates are eastern and non-eastern, so Lincoln and Rolleston would get the same. What I suspect you're referring to is individual developer agreements such as Lowe's Road, where there is an extra DC charge, and that is due to high growth areas where a specific developer agreement has had to be set up because the infrastructure has been put in there to provide for that intense growth of that little area, which is why the people in that specific area end up paying for it. And so that's why they might experience more, not necessarily Lincoln versus Rolleston, but because that particular area required specific infrastructure to allow it to progress.
Thank you, that's really clear. I just, for my own clarification, something like sewage, I know it's Selwood Water Limited now, but if we could talk historically, you know, there's a big sewage treatment plant or there's extra sewage or temporary sewage. I presume that's the sort of thing you're talking about in terms of large infrastructure that attracts a bigger contribution.
Excuse me, that rate is actually the same regardless of whether you are in Prebbleton, Rolleston, Lincoln, West Melton. It's all in the same catchment area. So that charge is the same per QE, no matter what township you're in, if you're connected to that supply. It's really the water is one of the big ones.
Yep.
And where there may be a development contribution for something specific in a catchment area, such as stormwater in Lincoln, or some of the ODP areas for roading in
Great.
Lincoln or Rolleston.
Great, thank you.
Denise.
Hi. This is probably a very sort of basic question, but with the DCs, I know that we're talking about reviewing them for the LTP. Is there any way of doing that quicker?
Quicker in terms of coming up
Sooner.
with new rates. So to come up with the new rates, we have to have the 10 to 30 year capital program planned to be able to do that. So until we have that capital program planned as part of the LTP, and that growth estimated, we can't perform those calculations any sooner, essentially.
Okay, I've had feedback from the public that they feel that we're being quite negligent in that we haven't put up charges sooner or quicker with the amount of development that's going through. And also just some feedback, I'm not sure, this is probably for Alison, but on the rates bills, can we make it clearer for people, you know, when it says community hall, I've got a lot of Prebleton who think they've paid specifically for a community hall in Prebleton, but it sounds like that you're just paying more towards community resources generally. Is
Yeah,
that
we can
right?
certainly look at the rates bills and make sure it's clear and
Yeah.
transparent around what the cost relates to.
Yeah, I think that would be good because there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. Thanks.
No more questions. Can I have someone please move that we accept the report? Sarah, seconded. Reese, all those in favour? It's carried. Thanks very much, guys. Now we move to the capital projects report. Over to you.
Morning, councillors. Welcome to the Capital Projects Report. I'm going to hand over to the fine gentleman on my left to take you through in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Tim. That was easy for you, wasn't it? Good morning, good morning, everybody. So this is obviously the report through to April, end of April. Sorry, Peter just also mentioned about the Prebleton Community Centre, so that's just repeated in here as well, just because it was a question from last time. I won't get into all the detail unless people got specific questions, but just running through the few little bits and pieces. We are typically, as far as we can tell, on track to sort of meet that sort of 61 to 64% spend. In May, we actually did achieve what was forecast, which was a nice thing to achieve, so hopefully that carries on. There's four little graphs. The bottom right one has just been changed just so that people are aware, just to sort of show some better information. And the other one as well, just to be aware of, is that the percentage of time complete, we've removed that in the short term because we're just trying to get some processes in the background better aligned to be able to do that more accurately and better. So rather than trying to give some information that might not be quite as accurate as ideal, we decided we'd just remove it in the interim until we get ourselves sorted out a little bit more. Just moving on to the other graphs with community services and facilities. Obviously, Leiston Medical Centre is up and running and firing. We're just getting some engineering and architects and things involved and starting to do some piece at the moment. There was a question, I think it was you, Reese, around the Rolleston Community Centre re-roofing. Was it Aaron, was it? My apologies. So just for clarification, the re-roof that's happened to date is a partial re-roof, and it was to deal with sort of the health and safety urgent work. there is a plan to re-roof it over stages over a period of time, and the big driver for that is to try to minimise the impact on the operations that are happening inside the building. So I think next financial year the plan is to re-roof it over the top of the reception area. So Whatarau, we're just in the process of getting consultants and people involved with that to be able to help us out with that, and the Leeston Medical Centre and Library, we're busy trying to figure out all the bits and pieces to try to make that work move along. On the open spaces and property side of things, a couple of projects just to sort of bring to people's mind is the Castle Hill car park is just about all the pieces are in place to be able to start doing that work as soon as we can in the springtime. And the West Mountain tennis courts is just about to have a contract awarded. In fact, it may even be awarded now. It's very imminent if it's not, so work will be starting there in the very near future. Rolling over onto the refuse side of things, there's a contract which is also imminent to be signed for the upgrading the work, the compost work there. So that's literally will start in the next in the next few weeks. It is a design build contract, so you won't see anything on the ground for a period of time, but there'll be the design work will be happening in the background. Support services, probably the one thing that's happened just in the recent weeks is there's actually been some vehicles have been ordered, so the big item in there is around, which I think was 600,000 from memory. Vehicle purchase 0.6 million, so a lot of part of that money has now been committed, I suppose, although there is delays in getting the vehicles because there's a waiting list, waiting time. Surface water, it's probably, if you're looking at the graphs, it's probably the scary one where it shows it rocketing and taking off towards over the last couple of months. So to date that is happening, so fingers crossed, and in fact I'm pretty confident it's going to continue being that way, so it's unlikely to be a big problem. And transport, I don't think there's anything in particular of relevance there. Things are pretty much on track, and it's going as expectations. And then going to things like table 1 at the end of it, there's a couple of projects there, like Hoskins Road and Duns Crossing, that have recently been completed, so they'll just naturally fall out of this graph as we go forward. And then getting into the dashboards at the end on the projects, so these are actually relatively real values and numbers and things, but they are also examples of where we're trying to head towards. So the first one, which is Rylands Weir, is a project that's halfway through construction. I'm trying to give a sort of an outline of what that looks like in the construction phase. The second one is Two Chain Walkers Roundabout, so that project's in design, so it's sort of trying to give an idea of what the dashboard would look like during a design phase. And then the third one, which is Jones Road, is one where the construction has been recently completed and it's now in its defects period. And I think that's it, unless you've got anything else, Peter. So,
thanks very much. You mentioned there's the new graph, the funding split by budgets and actuals. I wondered if maybe we could just be talked through that, since that's the first time we've seen it, and there could be some differences. I'm guessing there could be some differences in interpreting that graph versus the DC graphs we see in the other paper. I'm guessing that perhaps this refers to DCs that we have collected and are spending versus the previous one, which is projecting future DCs we plan to collect.
Yes, the other DC paper obviously looks at both the DC contribution side and the spend side and our overall balance. This is just looking at what we budgeted to spend out of the DC funds. So this is basically the split of how our capital projects are funded through DC's debt, external funding, and targeted rates, and just gives an idea of when we're saying that maybe we're not moving forward with a project or we've accelerated a project, it just gives you a better idea of, okay, the funding for that is coming from DCs, or the funding of that is coming from this. So you can kind of see where the spend is coming from a funding perspective.
Great, Thanks, Peter. Samuel.
Thank you. Just regarding the re-roof question, afterwards, can we please get a breakdown of which sections of the community centre were actually re-roofed and the total cost from memory? I'm trying to recollect what it was, but starting to feel a bit shaky on that. So, thank you.
Denise.
Hi. With the Lincoln Town Centre, this is going back a bit. You may have talked about it before, so apologies if I don't remember. Samhain Times advertised that there was originally a Three Waters grant for the town centre, but it doesn't show any grant or subsidies on the table. Do we know what happened to that?
So that would be in relation to the Better Off funding that we received for some of the waterworks. So that's already been spent and used before SWL was split off. So those portion of works were done and funded, and now the remaining portion, which is the roading and surface water and stormwater, is now funded through the funding split you see there.
So was that still part of the whole budget for the town centre?
Yeah, from the original works that had to be done at the beginning of the Lincoln Town Centre.
And with Maya Drive, Lincoln Reserve, it says about consultation is advancing well. Who are we consulting with? Because I don't know that the community know very much about it.
So consultation is in relation to the resource consents as opposed to community consultation, which is probably could have been a little bit clearer in the comments.
Okay.
So it's mainly with the Runanga and those sorts of people.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Thank you.
Lydia.
I am loving the dashboard reporting on the projects. Well done. We are making awesome steps in the direction that we've been asking you to do. I think what this is doing, though, is I always look at the risks associated, and I'm looking at two-chain walkers and the we intervene part there with risk. And I'm just wondering if you can give me a little bit more narrative around the current issues there with additional funding and the property acquisition costs.
I'm not right up to speed, but if I understand it correctly, from my knowledge of it all, is that we're going down a path where we've issued I think it's a Section 22 notice under the Public Works Act, compulsory purchase. But in parallel with that, good faith negotiations are going on with the landowner. As it stands at the moment, the good faith negotiations are going pretty well and are looking likely to be successful. But there is a risk that that won't happen. And if that doesn't happen, then going down the public works path will push timeframes out and probably push costs up. So,
I think if I could rephrase it a little bit, that we've had someone assess private property without consent.
Sorry, say that again, sorry.
We've had a consultant assess private property without consent.
It's under the current issues.
In current issues. So in that intervene part and then current issues, I'm trying to understand why and how that happened with an external party.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know that. I'll probably find that out. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, you're here. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Apologies, it was, I believe it was a surveyor who wanted to access the property. The landowner wasn't in and they didn't ring, unfortunately, and access the property by jumping the fence. So we have had a meeting about that. It has been rectified and the landowner's back on side.
Thank you.
Thank you for noting those sorts of issues to us as well. We don't want them uncovered, so that's great. It's good to hear that you've repaired the relationship. Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, echo Lydia's words on the dashboard, really useful, thank you, to keep track. First, silly question from me, 50% detailed design. Can you remind me what that is, please?
So most projects go through a sort of a concept design and a
Yep.
preliminary design, a detailed design, and then construction. So 50% is literally means that we're roughly 50% through that
Getting the
detailed design phase.
That makes perfect
So,
sense,
yeah.
thank you, Dave.
It is as simple as that, yeah.
Yeah, great. Rylands Weir, were any of the risks realised, i.e. any sediment discharged into the Liffey or any risk to any of the RC conditions on that one?
Yes, there was some sediment at one stage discharged, and ECAN were involved in things, and it was all, shouldn't say contained, but it was resolved pretty quickly.
Okay, nothing ongoing for that one?
Pardon?
Nothing ongoing?
No.
Cool. Kakaha Park, we're up to sort of further scope definition on that one. Are we expecting a briefing back on Kakaha stage 2 at any stage?
Yes, that's actually on our list because I think it's been a question in recent meetings to have a briefing on that, and I have to admit it's one thing we've been trying to get our heads around to get into that position to do that.
Great, thank you. And finally, Leaston Medical Centre. I know you've had some issues with trying to find an alternative premises for them. Is there sort of any time, are we time bound in any way? Is there a risk to that delay at all?
So the time constraint around that is the demolition of the library and one room in the medical centre.
Right.
So I don't think there's any risk in regards to demolishing that part of the building.
Okay.
And the time frame, I can't remember the date, I think it's either May or June. But as far as the refurbishment of the medical centre is concerned, there's actually no time constraint to that. Okay. So we're obviously targeting to try to do it on the same time frame. But if the refurbishment side of things drags over, there's no sort of time issues in relation to that.
No real risk?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
In relation to the health notice and things, yeah.
Thank you.
No further questions? No, Reece.
Sorry, just a couple of very simple ones. The 600k in the vehicle fleet, are they leased or purchased? They're owned by?
I believe they're owned.
Yes,
There is.
therefore purchase.
Yes. Sorry, I just looked around to see if Simon was here, so yes.
Sorry, Simon, thank you. And are those replacement vehicles or new? So are we divesting the older vehicles? They talked about it earlier.
Morning. I am, as of beginning of July, the new fleet manager. So I think in our fleet, just to give you a brief update, there's about 61 vehicles. The youngest one is, I think, 1 year old, and that's because it was an insurance replacement. The next youngest one is about 6 or 7 years old. We have a few old dungers that are really expensive to run, and we'll look to replace those. So we'll look to replace those really old, expensive vehicles and replace them with some hybrids. At the moment, we're looking at getting some RAV4s in to replace those because they're the best vehicle for us. Good fuel economy, and the Toyotas last forever as well. But just working through that at the moment, and we'll be in a better position come early July.
So are you divesting those older, more expensive R&M vehicles?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you. The Duns Crossing Road savings, thank you, Simon. The 1.2 million that was saved through engineering, how was it put? Engineering savings. What were the learnings from that?
So you mean the Duns?
The Duns Crossing roundabout. You're going on, and it was in the report financially that we've saved 1.2 million. And that is under budget, is on time, on budget, but it's actually under budget 1.2.
Which one's Duns Crossing? Just trying to get my head around it now. I'm trying to remember.
Was it The Duns Crossing roundabout Burnham.
So Duns Crossing, that's outside the West Rolleston Primary School. So just getting my heads around that. So the big one about that is that we actually got a very cheap tender price. It was actually a lot less than was anticipated. So that was probably the biggest factor involved in us getting, and it was probably a combination of a whole lot of factors that were, I suppose, industry-related factors that were occurring at the time. So my personal gut feeling is the chances of having a repeat of that is probably less likely than it was at that time. Having said that, the market's changed in the last month or two when Mr. Trump's fiery situation in the Middle East, but yeah, so that was a big factor with that. Was just we got a very cheap price.
Okay, so it's not the Duns Crossing intersection job with the Burnham roundabout Duns Crossing that's been on page, in the report on page 57. It's actually different. It's been right through the financials of 1.2 saving.
No, that actually, sorry, I think that is actually the same one. So you can see there the plan is 2.9 and that actual to date is 1.7. So that's your 1.2.
Correct. So what was, it lists that there was engineering savings. And so I just wondered here in page 55 in your commentary summary, the very last lines, Duns Crossing Road with carrying forward, some 1.2 in engineering savings have been identified.
Yeah, I suppose we're using engineering savings as more of a generic term to cover savings across the project or projects in total.
There'll be various reasons for those savings, Reece. Some will be value engineering, some will be procurement. But what we can do is we can get into all the savings that we make across these projects in a bit more detail in our portfolio meetings, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's just to understand what that is, so that we can continue them on, because it's a good news story.
Yeah,
it's not a negative, it's positive.
No, and to be honest, I think that we're just working through that at the moment. So I do expect there might be some more good news stories, perhaps not massive ones, but I think there is more to come that we can identify as we work through things towards the end of the financial year.
Oh, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Hey, David. Is the Leaston Library no more? Has it been demolished?
No, it's still there. So one of the things is alluded to is trying to find alternative accommodation for the medical centre. So trying to house them on site is not very desirable, because if we come across something like asbestos, for example, then we're trying to avoid having a situation where we risk the medical practice. We've been looking at quite a few different sites. There's no real buildings that are suitable in the town. And the most likely site that we can find, we're working through the stuff with that to be able to put some portacom buildings on that. So at this stage, no, it's all about the planning and working through with things.
So when is the library being demolished?
We need to work through that, but the thinking is that we will probably target having to try to move the medical centre out sort of towards the end of the year, maybe over Christmas and New Year, even to depending on what suits them for their practice and things, and then get straight into the demolition straight after that.
Okay. This is not a question for you. It's just a comment for my colleagues. I just remember in December that we were being asked to make a decision really quickly about demolishing the library. And it just had to be done. And then we came back for another meeting, and I'm just mindful that it's now June, and my definition of we've got to do something really quickly may be quite different to the one that was presented to us on December the 10th. Thank you.
I think there might have been an aspect of urgency about having made a decision, not necessarily then implementing it straight away, but clearly we can't keep delaying things. no more questions, I'll ask if someone would like to move that we accept the capital projects report. Tracy, seconder. Reese, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. The levels of service and performance summary. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. With me at the table is Kerry Jones, who's the performance reporting lead. Kerry has been instrumental in doing the work on our roadmap, which we presented last time, and preparing this report that we've provided to you, including the graphics, etc. So she's the one who's made all the data look pretty, etc. So thanks, Kerry, for that. Councillors, as I'm sure you'll remember, that normally levels of service are reported in the annual report, and this is really the first time that we can provide you with a quarterly report on how those levels of service are doing, bearing in mind a high proportion of those levels of service are reported annually. And so I'm hoping that at the next F&P we'll be able to give you a further update on nearly all those annual measures as well. As I said, this is at the last F&P we talked about a roadmap to improve the quality of reporting and provide you with a quarterly report on how those levels of service are going through the course of the year, as opposed to just seeing something at the end of the year. These measures are sort of all set as part of the last LTP, and as we develop the next LTP, I expect you'll probably want to set some new levels of service and performance measures, and also what your expectations are in terms of reporting on those measures. So these are historical ones. There are some mandatory measures, as I'm sure you'll be aware. The Minister for Local Government and the Department of Internal Affairs are considering council's mandatory measures that will feed into the next LTP. So that's something else that we'll consider as well. So there is this is an area that is going to be of growing interest. Today we're really this is the first report, so looking forward to receiving some of your feedback on that. Is it transparent? Is it providing the information that you can easily understand, and no doubt ask questions around how those areas are performing? So I'll basically leave it for you to ask any questions.
Thanks. Lydia.
Look, this is great. This is what we've been asking for. It is so nice to see this rather than just at year end and then wonder, what could we have done something to change the outcome in this situation. And look, I think this is fabulous to have this up on the table. It is performance monitoring that sits with this committee. And so, look, I'm stoked. And I'm also okay with not hitting all of the targets, because there are some implications in here that are potentially decisions that we have made in our this part of the financial year that may have effects on that, and there's also decisions from central government that will have effect on that. And so I think having the context next to those is really important for the transparency for our community as well. So this is a well done for putting this together. I'll not break my own rules and ask you a question. Are you as excited as me about this report?
Yes, definitely. as I'm sure the interim CEO is as well.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, no, look, excellent, and I've noted the comments you've made, and looking ahead, it just seems to me that when we've got the target in the measure, a percentage is very useful, but it's probably more useful to have some sort of quantitative as to number surveyed. But overall well done. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments and suggestions. And yes, you're quite right. It is quite useful to have the because as you said, if one person replies and they go, "Yep, I like the service," and it's 100% achieved, that's probably not reflective of the whole community of Selwyn.
Sarah.
Absolute reflection of these guys and Lydia's stokedness. This is brilliant. Thank you. Question for you. So if we've got an item here that is not on track, where we perceive it to become potentially a risk to the business, how is that then assessed and elevated?
So I work really closely with the associated head of department and work with them, and obviously the ELT members as well, and we put an action plan in place if they haven't already done so. So it's just making sure that there is no risk, and that will become more regular. But being the first time, this is the first time we've put it in one place, but it will become a more regular thing of making sure that they are on target as we have more regular updates and meetings and stuff like that. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. My other question is, are there any sort of level of service items here that are currently reported annually where an interim report could potentially support better performance, where we might look at changing beyond sort of regulatory reporting that we must do? Is there something that we could do?
Yeah, what I'm looking and talking to the team about is if there's a way in which we can perhaps even do a 6-monthly report, so it's a bit of a more of an overview if there is a way of measuring our overall performance. If it's an annual measure, some we aren't able to do because of just the way that the data is collected and reported on, but we are looking at doing that for the next financial year. And then obviously as we move into the looking at what we're going to measure in the next LTP, then that will be part of the what are we measuring, but how do we report it and how often can it be reported on as well. So it becomes part of that picture rather than just this is the measure and we don't know the results until the end of the financial year. So it is part of that whole what's next, but we are looking at trying to see if we can do a 6-monthly review of the 4 measures.
Love it. Look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Kia ora team, thank you very much for coming. My question's more around there's quite a few that it turns out we've not really got the right mechanism for measuring what we've set down as a level of service, which is kind of disappointing because some of them sound like really good things that we would want to know where we are, but the fact that we can't actually even work out where we sit along the scale is, well, for the one part, it's a bit surprising because I would have loved to know that before we agreed them as levels of service. And I guess the question is, like, is it achievable that by the end of the year we will be able to extract that information, or do we need? No. Okay then. So I kind of then it becomes a bit more of a forward request of the next time we're setting levels of service to be.
I mean, that's part of the thing again is what are we measuring and how can we measure, but also some of this work here has been talked about in what you've previously saw in Closing the Loop project and things like that. So it is looking at magic as well as how we use it, because it's really important to put the data in but to get the data out. Yes. And so obviously sometimes that full picture of how we use the system is not actually taken into consideration, and then measures are often created in isolation without actually making sure that they map it through. So it won't be done this time, it will be mapped to make sure that we can get the data out.
Okay, so continuous improvement type
Absolutely.
thing going on there.
But it's important for you to see why.
Yeah.
And to make sure that we can improve.
Yeah. Thank you very much, because that gives more motivation, hopefully, to people who are, putting the information in the system. There is a reason. This isn't just because we're asking you to, hit a keyboard a bit more. The other one that I had a question on was measure 2.26, which was environmental and regulation food complaints. So we outsource environmental health, don't we? Is that something that we need to look at as a contract issue, or?
I might refer that to Bob as the...
It's both a system configuration thing to actually get the reporting and actually be able to get accurate reporting out of the data, but also a contract thing as well, which we're working with our food and health supplier.
Okay, so we are working on that one. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is really good information, as other people have said. There's a couple of them. Well, they're mandatory measures, but it struck me as a little bit odd that the target was nil. And like one of them, for example, is compliance with consents is measured by nil prosecutions. And it struck me that you could game the system, and I'm not suggesting that we do, but you could achieve nil prosecutions by either everybody complying and doing a good job, or by some people not complying and us either turning a blind eye or putting forward a weak case and losing. Am I wrong in that that's an odd measure?
I guess that this, as mentioned, this exercise is drawing all these measures out which are unmeasurable or aren't quite the right measure, because you can get those situations. So through the LTP, we'll be really having a close look at these and actually having good quality measures that we have systems to actually report on.
Thank you. No further questions?
Sorry, can I just add to what Bob was saying? Councillors may, as part of the LTP, want to consider what would be an acceptable measure, noting that they wouldn't meet the mandatory measure, because a good example might be consents, where councillors could spend all the resources of council on trying to deliver 100% of the consents within the statutory time frame, but still not achieve it. So again, it's sort of like, what is an acceptable measure comparable with, say, some other councils that are doing same number of consents or similar number of consents, etc. So we can sort of benchmark ourselves against that, which might be a more appropriate measure as opposed to trying to achieve the statutory time frame.
Sarah's got
Sorry,
another question.
very quickly. Sorry, I had another little question hidden away here. So 2.8, 2.9 seem quite random. Carry out or facilitate 1 kilometre of riparian margin planting each year. It's a very specific target that we've got there. Where does it come from? Is this sort of, does it come from the biodiversity strategy, or how do we come up with these measures?
Normally they're developed as part of the LTP process, so with councillors around, well, what are the levels of service and what do you want to record against those, but yeah, I can't comment on that one specifically.
Okay, thank you. LTP. Great, thanks.
Yeah, just briefly, looking at the mandatory compliance times in relation to resource consents and signalling you're moving ahead, I presume that there's the room there that within meeting those time frames, council does have the ability to stop the clock. So there's probably no reason why they can't be achieved, but we can have that discussion later.
Regarding the measurements, carrying on with the example you gave around the consents, when we're setting future measurements, then with something like the consents, then it's about, for me, it's about focusing on the ones that didn't meet the target and analysing why they didn't meet the target, and therefore how might they meet the target, so that we then have the information to go, is the next target realistic, does it need more resourcing, and all of that. So that's the benefit of the looking back to look forward.
Thank you very much. Number 7.2 measure is about the number of members of the public who take part in our consultations, and I do note that we had a very successful annual plan consultation, so the measure will be well and truly met this year, but it might make it hard for next year. But thank you very much, guys. Can I have someone please move that we accept the level of service summary report? Sarah, second. Denise, all those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. We're about to move into a public excluded session. I think we'll take a break, but before we do, can we have someone move that we move into public excluded? Tracy, seconded. Samuel, all those in favour? Aye. Thank you very much, and we'll take a short break. Kia wātia. Ai, kia wātia. Thank you very much, everybody.